Well, I think that's a pretty good story there.
My turn now?
And yes, it is your turn now,
okay.
Because you didn't say anything about where you were.
I'll get going. Anyway, when I got out of high school, I went to work and found a job at AC Sparkplug, and I was working there when I was drafted. I went to Fort Custer, hopped on a train, went all the way to Corvallis, Oregon, trained in the infantry, and when I took placement tests, I found out I had good pitch discrimination and rhythm. So they said, you are a radio operator. You just have to learn the code, you'll be all set. So I learned the code, and then they put me in an infantry company, the INR platoon, which is intelligence and reconnaissance. So they have 200% casualties the first month of combat. So that wasn't an ideal situation about getting home. So I was able to pass enough tests that I was eligible to go to school at Washington State College for 9 months and earn some college credits. Then they shipped me to the 11th Armored Division, which was in Camp Cook, California, and I was able to get a nice furlough home, though I had a couple short furloughs home from Pullman, Washington, where the college was. So an unusual event happened there. My sisters were dating. My sister Mary was dating an engineer who was working at Buick and had a deferment, and my older sister Charity was working in a PX in Nashville, Tennessee, and she was attracted to, and there was mutual attraction between her and a fellow named E.W. Hoffman, who was a sergeant in the Air Force. So I didn't get to meet him when I was home in June, but in late June, they got married at the time when my sister Janet and her husband John and my dad were trout fishing. And they appeared at the reception in stinky old smoke flavored clothes and nasty stuff on the sleeves and stuff at the parsonage lawn. So somehow the state police finally got a hold of them and the camp on the river. So that was a big event in the life. But anyway, I shipped out to Camp Kilmer, New Jersey, then took the HMS Samaria, an English ship, to England, about 12 days. Looked out the back and saw one of the biggest convoys I could imagine, ships all around the horizon. And you looked out at night, and if they would turn, you'd see the wakes all go the same way, and we were happy that there were no submarines to attack us, so it was uneventful, except the fact I learned to hate smoked herring for breakfast. And we didn't have, we couldn't smoke on deck at night. We had to smoke hidden behind something so we didn't attract the enemy. So when we landed, we trained and fixed our vehicles up. I was assigned to a 500-watt radio station, and we practiced a little code, and the motor pool mechanics had some welders, and they also found a supply of angle iron about this size and some rod, and the first thing we knew that they built 2 big bins with plywood top and canvas top on the back of our half-track beside the door. And we wondered what that was for. And so finally, when we got in before we went over the continent in France, they loaded us up with sea rations, just cans and cans of food. And so now we knew. And the trip across the English Channel was supposedly started on, we loaded the ship on December 16th, and we were on the LST-510. And it turned out to be an adventure because when we tried to land on the 20th in Cherbourg Harbor, there was a dispute between our captain and the harbor master. And so he said, harbor master said, back out, come in again. I don't like the way you're coming in. So we could hear the stop and turn the screws in reverse, and we started going backwards. And I was down in the hold where the tank deck was, and I was writing letters to my sweetie, whoever it was at that time. All of a sudden there's a terrible crunching and grinding of metal on metal. And son of a gun, somebody did not put a buoy on the top of a sunken hulk of a ship. And so the superstructure tore holes in the bottom of the boat. The boat tipped just a hair like that. And the loud noises from general quarters that the sailors did, and they grabbed their life jackets and their carbines, and one guy said, I hope this old rust bucket sinks. We'll get 30-day survivorship leave. And I'm thinking, we got, $1 million worth of wire equipment, we got switchboards, we got 19 radios, we got 5, well, I only had a 100-watt station. We had 6 500-watt stations. That's all going to go down. So luckily they closed the hatches and put on auxiliary lights, and we were ordered up and over the side. And that was an adventure. We grabbed the cargo nets that were draped over, and we watched this little LCVPs about 50 foot long, bouncing in 6 to 8 foot waves. And so the key was to catch them on just before they get all the way up and jump. And so I was successful, and I didn't break my leg. And nobody of our 293 people broke a leg. So they put us up on a LST on the shore, another one, and next morning, after Navy chow, they had taken electric cables and hooked up the motors and the on the good LS Street to the bow doors and the ramp, and we just wound up our vehicles and took off across France. So that was a big adventure. Other big adventure was going into Bastogne on the 30th when the artillery shells were bouncing on the ground the other side of us. We was 1,000 yards on each side of the highway going in from the southwest. And so you looked out a little peephole in the side of the half-track, and you saw the dirt and the snow explode. And the German shells were too high. And we told the truck driver, get this thing in high gear and let's get out of here. And all the other vehicles in the convoy took off like mad. I wonder we didn't burn the engines up. So we got inside Bastogne and we were okay. So the biggest problem I had was keeping warm in the winter. And one time, to avoid frostbite, so sometimes we slept on the ground, and it wasn't too comfortable because your bladder would fill up in a hurry, and you have really bad pain. So anyway, we dug a hole in the ground, big enough for 3 guys to lay in. Found a bunch of rocks on the side of the field we were in. Cut down dry boughs from neighboring forest. Set a big fire there. And when it burned out, we put green boughs on there and slept well for 3 nights. So that's ingenuity of the GIs. So at any rate, I worked on my craft as a radio operator, and I was the youngest man on the crew, so I got a crappy shift like from midnight to 3 in the morning, and from noon to 3 in the afternoon. So I was always short of sleep, and I had a chronic dry eyes, and so, but we did well, and we saved, we had some days when we carried a lot of traffic and helped the other units in the division get back and forth, and I was assigned to Division Field Artillery Headquarters, who directed the artillery for the division. So the only really interesting experience I had there was real crazy is once I took a shot at the first German jet I ever saw. I missed it with a .30 caliber machine gun. The other one was when we were parked on the road and I wanted to relieve myself. So there's a big field there through a draw, and so I decided we might camp there for the night. So I took a shovel and toilet paper and walked into the woods. And when I finished, I looked up the road and there was 5 Hungarian soldiers approaching me. You could tell by the uniform. They had 2 white flags, Hungarian flag, and a regimental flag. There was one guy with silver. He wasn't carrying anything. Silver ornaments on his collar. So I couldn't figure out if he was a colonel or what he was. And then there was another guy with red or yellow. So I thought they were officers. So at any rate, I stood out there with my carbine, motioned to come on, and they followed me to the back of the half track. I walked up the side of the column with these guys following me, and I forgot to take their pistols. They'd been worth $100 a piece. And I was very naive. Since I didn't speak Hungarian or French or anything, I marched them up to the colonel and said, "Colonel, sir, these Hungarian officers appear to want to surrender some troops." So I went back to the half track and I went and got the shovel. And I didn't figure out where how many there were. Finally, I had a after action report. Found that on the 23rd of April, the DSE Hungarian division surrendered 2,000 troops. And so there was one article where they surrendered 200, but I think they were the guys that I helped surrender. So that was my big experience. I've been happy since I moved to Muskegon, and I had a good family and a couple daughters and nice stepdaughters, and I worked for the state as a parole officer, which is an unusual job, but I was sleeping through an 8 o'clock class in 48 on my senior year. You didn't have to go to class after a while because your grades were already in there. So they called me from the corrections department, come down for an interview. I went down and they asked me some silly questions like, should you spank a child? Or little things like that. And I said, only under certain circumstances, probably never, At any rate, I passed the interview, went to work, And then I finally took a promotional exam, and I finished high on that, so I had the job as a corrections officer in Detroit. So I enjoyed it down there, but things were getting kind of bad. People kept hitting me in the rear end of my car and pushing me into cars ahead of me. So that wasn't much fun. I had a busted romance, so it didn't work out. So I came to Muskegon when they offered me 17 days expenses at the Occidental. That was the carrot. So I came here, I stayed, and I like it here. And I've had a pretty successful life, and I received a couple of awards. One from the County Bar Association for outstanding performance by a non-attorney in administration of criminal justice. And they said I did a great job finding jobs for my parolees. And then after I retired, I spent 18 years taking people from the criminal justice system to schools to speak to kids. They would have a forum where we'd have 6 to 8 speakers spend 15 minutes with groups of children and talk about their life and how they got where they are and what the problems they have on their job, and also remind them not to get in trouble with the law. So some of the judges felt that probation agents, juvenile court officers, and parole officers don't get any respect or recognition because they're out there, 75 to 100 of them every morning trying to straighten out the lads and the lasses in the community who are failing to do a bunch. And so they decided to have a Parole and Probation Parolee of the Year award, and they named it after me. And there's a plaque in the courthouse with 6 or 7 names on it of people who have been nominated. So I don't have to have a funeral site or a marker because I'm already known. So I'll save money eventually. But at any rate, it was a rewarding experience, and when I was working, I got so I could listen to the client, understand where he was coming from, and then jump back to being a parole agent and knowing whether or not he was a threat to the community and whether he violated his parole seriously enough to be returned to prison. But mostly you tried to help them. You're 90% social worker and 10% detective. And when I retired, I missed it for a while. And all of a sudden I said, you've been looking after other people's troubles for years, 30-some years. You might as well start looking after your own troubles more. So I learned to play golf a little bit and garden a little bit and started dancing a little more than I used to. And so I've had a very good life, and I take it, it all starts back with my Army service was the fact that I inherited some musical ability, and I haven't sung recently, but I've been a 34-year member of the local Barbershop Harmony Society. So right now I have about 40 friends out there that I haven't seen much of, but it's been a very interesting life for me. And I have some material there. Paul, bring me that Jap's quip. Can you do that?
You got that right down there.
Here it is. Never mind. At any rate, when the war ended in Japan. I was in Germany, and it's near a town called Rosenheim, and the paper was come out with this article, Japs Quit, and it tells how the communications were very tentative between Switzerland and this country and that country, and that they hadn't really decided when they were going to sign the armistice. But the most important thing is that I saved this paper, and it's now a historical document, I guess, and I have had it framed recently, and it's not ready for publication. But at any rate, I had a nice article about it in the paper a couple years ago, and I thought that was one of my best souvenirs of the war. And I have put some other items on tables there that I accumulated about the 11th Armored Division, which was a pretty hot shot. We captured 79,229 prisoners with only about 11,000 men. That's about 7 apiece. And I think I got 2,000 myself. So anyway, I'm glad I lived through it, and I guess I can say that I ducked at the right time and used my talent as my musical talent, which helped me be a radio operator and put me in the rear, so I didn't get shot at only once. And we had 5 or 6 mortars that landed near us, but the worst thing that happened was that a spent piece of shrapnel landed on my leg when it was cooled off and didn't even dent the skin, so I didn't get a Purple Heart. But I didn't resent that at all. So that's it.